Hello, future paralegals, and welcome back to Pretty Paralegal. I am Naomi Joy, and today you are going to learn the top 10 reasons why many paralegal students do not pass the P1 licensing exam and what you can do to prevent that from happening to you. Now, I know it seems kind of like a negative approach, like, well, we don't want to know why people didn't pass. We want to know why they did pass. But sometimes it helps to know where the holes are, where the weaknesses are for others, where they made their mistakes, so you can learn from their mistakes. I'm basing this off of experience working with other students and what some of the challenges were that they faced and how they overcame those challenges, okay? So here we go. The top 10 reasons why many paralegal students do not pass the P1 licensing exam. Number 10. Relying on too many materials. So if you watched part 1 of this series, you will have learned that the materials form part of the 3 tests, meaning the secret ways in which the exam is testing you, other than on your knowledge of law, and one of them is the materials. I can't tell you how many students show up with every single book that they acquired in school, but the problem with that is that it ends up becoming an obstacle in the race against time. You have 7 hours to answer 240 questions, and many of these questions are presented in the form of case scenarios, which are large paragraphs that you have to read and disseminate before you even get to the question and are able to even answer it. So a lot of time is used up in just reading and in understanding what is being asked of you. So if you have too many materials on your table, you are going to be tempted to actually refer to them. It's just human nature. If it's right there, you're gonna feel like, okay, I have to go right to the materials before I attempt to answer this question. I'm here to tell you to not do that. It will slow you down. You really only need to bring the Law Society examination materials that have been provided to you, that you paid money for. It's there for a reason, okay? All of the answers to any question that could be asked of you are in those materials. And in fact, the materials are going to have more information than you even need for this exam. You can also bring with you any cheat sheets that you've created, any notes that you have that make sense to you and that help you to understand maybe something that you struggle with. But other than that, keep it very simple. Do not clutter your table with materials. To learn more about how to best organize those materials, definitely sign up for the Tips and Tricks program. Number 9, no knowledge of the 3 tests. If you watched part 1 of this series, which I hope you did, if you haven't watched part 1 by now, stop this video, okay? Stop watching this video and go back and watch part 1, because it's necessary for you to appreciate and understand the information that I'm giving you in this video, okay? So the 3 tests, as I explained in part 1, are the materials, your logic and reasoning skills, and that not all information is relevant. Okay, if you have a very clear understanding of the 3 tests and what that means and how that works, then you have an added advantage over other students in this exam. Although this exam isn't necessarily a competition, I kind of want you to think of it that way because you are graded on a curve. So your success in this exam is contingent on you doing as good as or better than other students in the exam. So having a knowledge of the 3 tests will change how you view the exam, and it will increase your chances of success. Apply them in your review and preparation and study before going to the exam. Number 8, they have limited practice experience and no mentor. If I'm being completely honest with you, I do not feel that paralegals are required to spend enough time to become licensed. Lawyers have to article for 10 months. Paralegals only need to do a 120-hour practicum. That's not enough time, my friends, to learn enough about what it means to provide legal services. It's not enough time to gain any experience so that you can get started on your careers. So what I encourage you to do, if you haven't already, is to consider participating in a longer internship. If you've already done your 120 hours, find another licensee that you can work with, that you can volunteer with, who will actually allow you to do real legal work on their cases, whether that's performing legal research, whether that's drafting documents that they review, whether that's sitting in on client consultations, whatever it may be. You need to gain as much experience as you can before writing the exam in practice. Now, many of you have jobs in the legal field in an administrative capacity. Maybe it's as a clerk or an administrative assistant. That's not necessarily going to help you in the exam unless the clerking position allows you to do true legal work. In some law firms, that is the case. Many law clerks are actually paralegals. So I encourage you to do a longer internship. And if that is not practical for you, then find a mentor. It's going to assist you in the exam. For me personally, when I went to write the exam, I had already been working on like several small claims matters, and they ranged. They dealt with agency issues, they dealt with tort matters, they dealt with property disputes, and so many others. Plus, because I was working under the supervision of a lawyer who was my mentor at the time, I was learning a lot about contracts law. I was learning a lot about corporate law. I was learning about other areas of law that paralegal schools or paralegal programs don't really put a lot of emphasis on. And it made a huge difference in molding how I viewed things and how I was able to think in a legal way, so that when I was presented with exam questions that were a little bit more complex, I was still able to apply simple logic and reasoning to a lot of these questions and how I answered them, even if I didn't have a perfect knowledge of law, simply because I had developed my legal thinking abilities and I had a broader understanding of law in other areas. Number 7, they were out of school too long. I often, and actually not just often, I always encourage paralegal students to write their P1 licensing exam within 12 months of completing their last day of school or their practicum. The reason for this is because after 12 months, things start to get a little foggy. If you're not using the knowledge that you've acquired, if you're not practicing it every day, it's very easy to forget a lot of it. You need to be active in your participation in your practice of legal services. So if it has been 12 months or longer since you've been in school or worked in a legal environment, I encourage you to find a mentor who is going to help you with that law review. You're probably going to need a little bit of extra law review to remember things. If you don't use it, you lose it, right? So act on the opportunity to write the exam quickly. Get the help you need as soon as possible. Don't wait until, a year and a half has gone by to start studying. Throughout that 12-month period, you should be consistently reviewing your notes, your books, and then when you register for the exam, focus on the examination materials. Read them every single day. Even if it's just one paragraph, just keep your mind in that that sort of area, that legal playing field, if you will, right? So that you don't lose it. Number 6, they didn't understand which area of law applies. So this is one of the big reasons why students did not pass. They didn't understand which area of law applied to the question. Most of the exam questions deal with more than one area of law, but you have to become very clear on what area of law applies to the specific question being asked. For example, you may get a case scenario that explains a situation where a paralegal is representing a client in a small claims matter, okay? So right away, Some students immediately think, okay, it's civil litigation, I got to turn to that section of the materials, and they kind of fixate on that in their minds, okay? But the question itself may actually have nothing to do with that. The question itself might have to do with advocacy and dealing with, let's say, client instructions or something to that effect. Or it may deal with practice management or professional responsibility, okay? But the case scenario deals with or mentions it's within the context of a civil dispute. Do not get bogged down by all the information in the case scenario. Recognize that most of the time the questions or the scenarios presented to you in the exam are going to be multifaceted. So focus on the question. What is the question actually asking you, and does that question apply to all of the areas of law presented in the case scenario or just one? You know what I mean? So if you can do that, then you will become clear on what area of law applies to the question being asked. And if you have to turn to the materials, you'll be a lot more efficient in getting to the answer than if you allow yourself to get confused by some of the information in the case scenario and end up misunderstanding what area of law actually applies. Number 5, they didn't understand the question. So similarly to number 6, where they misunderstood what area of law applied, they don't understand the questions. They don't understand what is actually being asked of them. And it makes sense that this would be the case from time to time because the questions are worded in a way sometimes that can be a little bit confusing. I encourage you to have a dialogue with yourself. Don't be afraid to kind of whisper to yourself, what are they asking me? What are they actually asking me? What does this mean? Sometimes verbalizing the questions or verbalizing the things that are confusing you, it kind of shifts how your brain operates and looks at the problem. So don't be afraid to have that dialogue just to kind of keep yourself focused and to become clear on what the actual question is, okay? Not the scenario. People look at the paragraph and they say, okay, question number whatever. That whole paragraph is not the question. Only a part of that paragraph is where they're asking you to do something. So be clear on what they're asking you to do and then relate that back to the information in the paragraph. Number 4, they overthink things and inject a context that isn't there. So I mentioned this a little bit during the first video tutorial discussing the 3 tests. Sometimes students will overthink the scenario. This isn't real life, okay? You don't have to think about every potential scenario that could or couldn't be. You just need to focus on what's in front of you. The exam is going to give you all the information you need to answer the question. If it is not explicitly written in the case scenario, do not inject information into it that doesn't exist, okay? Don't talk yourself into a situation or a circumstance or a potential scenario that was not explicitly written out in the exam for you. If it's not on the paper, it doesn't apply, okay? So don't overthink things. Just keep it simple. The answer is right in front of you, and all the information that you need is right in front of you. Not all of that information is going to be relevant, so you're going to need to be able to decode that and weed out the irrelevant information. But focus on what is relevant, and that will assist you in getting to the right answer. Number 3, they second guess themselves and have no confidence. Confidence plays a huge role in this exam, and so much of what I do in the 8 Steps to Success program is work on your mindset and help you to feel confident in the areas of law or the skills that you feel like you're wavering on or aren't as strong in. This is so important because it is a challenging exam and it is a very stressful environment within which to write the exam. You're going to be surrounded by a lot of people, and tensions are going to be high. You're going to feel that anxiety in the air. You might even see people cry. This is not an easy exam to write, but I am also here to tell you that you can do it, to trust yourselves. You know things. You got to tell yourself that. Like, I actually want you to say to yourselves, I know things. You don't necessarily know all the things, but you know things. You know so much about the law upon which you are going to be tested. So have confidence in yourself. Shift how you think. If you are having a dialogue with yourself that says, I suck at multiple choice tests. Oh my goodness, I don't know what I'm going to do. I suck at it because of this reason and that reason. Well, then you're already defeating yourself. You're already talking yourself into not succeeding. You need to have a dialogue with yourself that says, I can do this, I will do this, and I have acquired knowledge which is going to allow me to succeed. Trust your instincts. Sometimes students will select an answer and then they'll change it because they've talked themselves into doubting that they've selected the right answer. Trust your instincts and move on. If you have time at the end of the exam, you can go back and do an extra review or, search the materials a little deeper, but trust yourselves. Don't talk yourselves into the wrong answer because you have no confidence that you've selected the right one. Number 2, a language barrier. Many students are coming into the paralegal profession with English as a second language. And this sometimes presents as a very unique challenge for paralegal students. And that's because the language of law is challenging even for someone who has English as a first language, because it's sort of its own language. Legalese is its own thing. And, sometimes you're dealing with Latin terms. You're dealing with concepts that you may not have heard before. And very often we use language in our everyday vernacular that are actually legal terms that mean very specific things, but we've just become so used to associating those words with other meaning. And if English is your second language, even if you have a very strong command of the English language, it can still present a very unique challenge. So what I encourage students to do who have English as a second language is to really practice your legal vocabulary. I don't mean just read about it. Reading is one thing, but actually practice speaking it. Use the words, say the words. Have a dialogue with other people, other paralegals or other paralegal students, and let them know that you're actually trying to develop your legal vocabulary so that if they catch you saying something incorrectly, tell them that you want to be corrected. Let them know that it is okay for them to correct you. I feel like very often people, they won't correct words that are misused because they don't want to feel like they're being rude or they don't want to hurt somebody's feelings, but that doesn't necessarily help them. It helps if the word that is being misused is corrected for them. And it then helps if you, as the student with the language barrier, repeats it back and actually say it. Don't just read it because that's too passive. You need to write it and you need to speak it. And that does something to solidify the correction in your mind. The number one reason why many students do not pass the licensing exam is this: they didn't finish the exam. The reality is, guys, that it's a 7-hour exam and you have less than 2 minutes to answer each question. But the challenge that you're going to face is that the questions aren't just straightforward questions. You're going to get case scenarios in large paragraphs, and that takes time to read, in addition to taking time to understand the answer options and potentially having to refer to your materials. Wayne Gretzky once said that you miss 100% of the shots that you don't take. Do not leave any questions blank. To learn more about how you can finish the exam, please take the 8 Steps to Success P1 exam prep program. That is going to teach you exactly what you need to do and how to practice it before the exam so that you finish the exam long before the exam ends, or at least with a little bit of time to spare so that you can go back and review any questions that you were really stuck on. Just a quick recap, here are the top 10 reasons why many students do not pass the P1 licensing exam. Number 10, they relied on too many materials. Number 9, they had no knowledge of the 3 tests. Number 8, they had limited practice experience and no mentor. Number 7, they were out of school for 12 months or longer. Number 6, they misunderstood which area of law applied to the question being asked. Number 5, they didn't understand the question. Number 4, they were overthinking things and injecting a context into the case scenario that was not provided. Number 3, they doubted themselves and had no confidence. Number 2, they had a language barrier where English was not their first language and struggled with the legalese or legal terminology. And the number 1 reason why many students did not pass the P1 licensing exam is because they didn't finish the exam. All right, so that's all for now. And once again, I encourage and invite you to enroll in the 8 Steps to Success P1 exam prep course, which is going to teach you how to get to the correct answer quickly using an 8-rule strategy. And not only just teaching you the strategy, but practicing that strategy through practice tests. So please sign up, and remember, advocacy doesn't have to be ugly, so let's keep it pretty. I'll see you guys soon.